Scripture reading this morning is from 1 Kings chapter 11, and verses 9 and 10. So the Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart turned from the Lord God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods. But he did not keep what the Lord had commanded. This was the end of King Solomon. At the end of his life, the Lord became angry with him because he didn't do what God had told him to do, especially concerning idolatry. So we've been talking about in Ecclesiastes, Solomon was given wisdom by God. He was the most wise man that ever walked the face of the earth from Adam until right now. Nobody has ever been wiser than he was, and yet God became angry with him because he didn't do what God had commanded him to do. So the lesson today is when wisdom isn't enough. Solomon, his wisdom wasn't enough. He was in trouble with the Lord at the end of his life. So this is a lesson for us from the life of King Solomon. Now, we're going to go through a bit of the life of Solomon, and we're going to do a lot of reading out of 1 Kings. And in 1 Kings chapter 3, starting with verse 5, we have his extraordinary beginning. He started off a humble guy and is very pleasing to God, very extraordinary. And in 1 Kings chapter 3, starting with verse 5, it says, at Gibeon, and this Gibeon is just a little bit north of Jerusalem, maybe 9-10 miles north of Jerusalem. It's got a whole history of its own, which you don't have time to talk about. But just a few years before, Joab and Abner, which were King David's right-hand man and the right-hand man of another that was an enemy to King David, they had a battle there at the well of Gibeon. And numerous things happened at Gibeon, but this also happened. God appeared to Solomon in a dream by night and said, ask what I shall give you. How many of us would love to have that dream? God would just say, hey, I'm your genie. Have whatever you want. What do you want me to give you? And Solomon said, you have shown great mercy to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in truth, in righteousness and uprightness of heart with you. You have continued this great kindness for him. You have given him a son to sit on his throne, as it is this day. Now, O Lord, my God, you have made your servant king instead of my father David, but I'm a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. A polite way of saying I'm ignorant. I don't know what to do. And with that in mind, he says, and your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to be numbered or counted. Therefore, give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours? The speech pleased the Lord. Solomon had asked this thing. Solomon said, I'm ill-equipped to become king. You've blessed me to make me king, but I'm ill-equipped, and I would love to have wisdom. I'd love to have an understanding heart so I can watch over, I can judge your people, do the right thing by them. Well, that would, if somebody said an answer like that to any of our offers, we would love to have that answer. And Solomon, God was no different. God was happy. It pleased him that Solomon asked for this. And then God said to him, because you have asked this thing and have not asked for long life for yourself, nor have asked for riches for yourself, nor have asked the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern justice, Behold, I have done according to your words. See, I have given you wise and understanding heart. Now, I don't know what that feels like to not have it and then the next instant have it. But God says, you've got it, Solomon, you've got it now. I've given it to you, so that there has not been anyone like you before you, nor shall there any like you arise after you. You're going to be the most wise and understanding man that had ever lived up to his time and that would ever live until the time of the return of Jesus. And so he got the wisdom that he was asking for. He also got a lot of riches as well, which I didn't include that in the reading. But God said, I will bless you and give you much riches. And he was one of the richest men to ever live as well. But the highlights of this part of the story is that Solomon begins with humility. I'm only a little child. I don't know how to carry out my duties. I need help. Well, he asks not for wealth or power, but for wisdom to lead God's people. He wants to know how he can be a good king. And God responds with abundance, with wisdom, honor, and prosperity. He gives them everything. This is a guy who, if anybody ever could say, I had it all, it would be Solomon. He had it all. And he tried to do the right thing with it. And we're going to see that he had some golden years. After he became king and asked for wisdom, God blessed him incredibly. And his years were spent wisdom in action, doing the right things in the right way, and just prospering so much from it. I'm going to read a few passages in First Kings here. First Kings chapter 4, verse 29 to 34. And God gave Solomon wisdom and exceeding great understanding. And so we learned that he had asked for it, and so God gave it to him. Understanding and largeness of heart like the sand of the seashore. We don't say largeness of heart. We say he had a big heart. His heart was wide open to the people. Just like the sand of the seashore, you can't count it. That's how open his heart was to the people. He wanted to do the very best for them. And thus, Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the men of the East and the wisdom of Egypt. Now, if you know what was east of Jerusalem, it's desert. He's not talking about that. East of that Arabian desert is Babylon and Assyria and Persia and the place of much wisdom and understanding astronomy and all that kind of stuff. And it was the three wise men that came to visit Jesus as when he was born. Wise men from the East came. These were the kind of people that he's talking about here. Solomon was wiser than all of them. And his fame was in all the surrounding nations. Everybody knew about Solomon, about his wisdom, and about his wealth that he was gathering. He spoke 3,000 proverbs. These proverbs are written in the book of Proverbs. Most of us can't even think of one wise saying to say, but he spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. David wrote a lot of Psalms. That's what's in the book of Psalms. But Solomon also wrote Psalms, 1,005 of them. And the men of all nations, from all the kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom, came to hear the wisdom of Solomon. So people from all over the place, all over the world, were coming to listen, to get advice from Solomon. Now we're going to read about one of these people that came to visit him, the famous one that is in the next verse. Now, when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to test him with hard questions. she came to Jerusalem with a very great retinue. A retinue is a bunch of people that come to support her journey, carrying all her stuff, carrying whatever she was bringing with her. Now, she came from Sheba. Sheba, it's believed by almost all the scholars, was from a place that is now called Yemen, over here at the bottom of the Arabian Peninsula. And somewhere in here is where Sheba was. And so she made a journey. She made a journey up to right here, where it's where Jerusalem is. And I'm just gonna enlarge this area so you can see a little bit better picture of it. She started down. Well, she was going to Jerusalem, but she started from Sheba, and she made the trip probably by water. Going through this Arabian desert wouldn't be much of a picnic. But she loaded all kinds of stuff. We're going to see in a moment what kind of stuff that she had, and sailed up the Red Sea, up the Gulf of Aqaba into Israel, and then made the trip from there, probably maybe 50 or 60, 100 miles up to Jerusalem, going past the city of Petra. Those of you that know what that is will find that interesting. But she made a long journey. Now, to get an idea of how long that journey was that she made, what you see in the red line that goes from Sheba to Jerusalem is longer than the entire coast of California. Not California, the entire west coast of the United States, from the top of Washington all the way down to San Diego. It's longer than that. So she made quite the journey. Why did she go? She wanted to seek out his wisdom, to test how much he knew. Well, she came with camels and bore spices and very much gold and precious stones. So when these people came to visit Solomon, they brought gifts to give to him. He was famous, and he became rich as well as being famous. And so she didn't just come with one little tiny boat or riding on one camel going up. It was a whole retinue of people and things, and boats big enough to carry camels. And then the camels, once they got on land, would carry the stuff that was on the boats. So this was a big deal that they came. And it would be the same thing with all the kings that came to visit him. It would be a big deal. And so all these kings came to visit. And it says that she came to Solomon and she spoke with him about all that was in her heart. She also had questions in her mind, things that she cared about, things that she wanted to know. And she asked him all these questions. And so Solomon answered all her questions. And there was nothing so difficult for the king that he could not explain it to her. Any question she asked, he could give her an answer for. Wouldn't you like to have that ability to be able to just, okay, here's the deal. Here's the answer to that problem. And there's a lot of hard problems in this life, as we all know. He was able to explain it. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon and the house that he had built, the food on his table, the seating of the servants, the service of his waiters, and their apparel, even the waiters wore fancy clothes, his cupbearers, his entryway by which he went up to the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit left in her. She's the queen of a country, and she got depressed. There's no more spirit left in her. I remember when we were building our house in Snohomish, it was a nice house, 4 bedrooms, 2,800 square feet. And we built it with our own hands, but yet it wasn't quite finished, and it didn't have the best of everything in it, but it was a nice house. But we got invited to a house of someone else. Some of you met Dave and Suzanne Neer from Fish Lake, but they had a house in Grousmont over in Bellevue area. it was a Street of Dreams home, and it was really fancy. We went there for a party, and my spirit, I'd been working for 2 years on this house, and my spirit just, no matter what I do, it's not going to be as nice as this house. That's the kind of thing that she must have felt when she saw everything that he had and all the wisdom he had. Her heart just fell, and her spirit was gone from her for a time. And then she said to the king, "It was a true report which I heard in my own land about your words and your wisdom. However, I did not believe the words until I came and saw with my own eyes. And indeed, the half was not told me." You're wiser than anybody ever told me. Your wisdom and prosperity exceed the fame which I heard. What you have is just beyond what anybody had ever, what all the rumors and everything. You're better than that. You're greater than that. And then she just brings more to him to add to the wealth. She says, "Happy are your men and happy are your servants." That word "happy" is the same word that's in the Beatitudes. Blessed are the meek. Blessed, your men are truly blessed, and your servants who have stand continually before you and hear your wisdom. What a blessing it would be to be in that house. "Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you, setting you on the throne of Israel. Because the Lord has loved Israel forever, therefore he made you king to do justice and righteousness." This is quite a woman when you think about it. She wasn't exactly lacking in wisdom herself. She could see, yeah, this guy got blessed so crazy by this Jehovah of his, and nobody else is like him, and nobody has the wisdom that he has, and everybody in your household is blessed to be there. Your God is blessed because he chose you, this wise person, to be the king over his nation, to lead it in righteousness, which is what he wanted to do. And then she gave the king 120 talents of gold, spices in great quantity, and precious stones. There never again came such abundance of spices as the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Doesn't say how much spices she gave to him, but if you remember from our study in the life of Christ, Mary had this jar of ointment, and it was worth something like $20,000, just one little jar. She had great quantities of that. You can imagine the wealth that she brought and added to Solomon's wealth. And she was just one of the royalty that came to visit him, to see him on a constant basis. And so he became more wealthy than anyone could imagine. And it was because God was blessing him, especially for asking for wisdom instead of asking for the wealth and knowledge and that sort of thing. God gave him everything. He had it all. Highlights of this section are this: Solomon's wisdom becomes legendary. 3,000 proverbs, 1,500 songs. The Queen of Sheba travels far to witness his brilliance. Israel experiences peace and prosperity and stability. David, his father David, King David, had subdued all the nations around to make it a peaceful place for Solomon to live and to rule. And he took that and he made it prosper. And using his wisdom, the nation just lived in peace and was a stable nation. Now, having talked about the wealth that Solomon had, I just wanted to throw this in there. Doesn't belong in this lesson, but I just wanted to throw this in. Something that Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. He said about people being concerned about what they have. He says, "Consider the lilies of the field, how they toil. They toil not, neither do they spin. Yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these." So all the wealth and everything that the beautiful clothes that he had to wear, the purple and the blue and the gold and all that kind of stuff. Jesus said, just look at the flower out there in the field. Go look at the flower. and you look up close, as you see there, even Solomon and all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. I'm just zooming in. Oh, it's working on my end. It's not working on that end. Anyway, that's zoomed in enough. Just the intricacy and the detail and the beauty, the colors, amazing. So just having all that stuff, well, Solomon's going to discover it for himself, that all the riches in the world are not going to get him anything to leave this world with any more than a poor person that doesn't have anything. But so Solomon had a ton of wealth, but he was not dressed like just the flowers that you can look at every day of your life. All right, so with that injection in there, we come to the last part, which is Solomon's tragic drift, which I call a slow fade of a divided heart. And this is in 1 Kings chapter 11. Okay, after he had all this wealth and wisdom, but there's that famous word that we saw so many times in the book of Hebrews. There's a contrast. In contrast to having all the blessings, King Solomon loved many foreign women, as well as the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, the Sidonians, the Hittites, from the nations of whom the Lord has said to the children of Israel, you shall not intermarry with them, nor will they with you. Surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods. So he had told the nation of Israel as it was beginning, don't intermarry with these other nations because they will turn your heart away from me. I don't want you to do that. Don't do it. But Solomon did it anyway. He, being a king, I mean, a king can have anything he wants, and many kings had harems where they might have a numerous number of wives, but then they also had concubines, which they would just find the most beautiful things that they could find, women that they could find out wherever they could find them and bring them into their harem, and just so they could say that they had them. Just like today, guys collect cars, just want to have the best of everything. This one Ferrari just went on sale at the Mecum auction, sold for $45 million. And that was just one of his collection. He had a whole collection of Ferraris. Anyway, this is how this would work. But God says, don't do it because they'll turn your heart away. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. 1,000 women in his, I don't know what kind of building he must have provided for them, but it would have been a lavish thing. But there's no way one man can, well, it's hard enough to deal with one wife, let alone, and no offense to you ladies, but it's not, anyway, 700, can you imagine what that would be like? That's why there's some proverbs in there that deal with that kind of thing. But anyway, he had a lot. He had it all. But it says the last line, and his wives turned away his heart. He started with a heart for God. He started, please give me wisdom. I want to rule my people well. But he had a weakness. As wise as he was, he had a weakness, didn't use that wisdom properly, and it caused him some problems. The story continues, for it was so when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods. And his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, to Jehovah, that is, as was the heart of his father David. David had made mistakes, we all know that, but he had repented and got back on track with God. But Solomon went after these foreign gods, didn't put God first in his life. Verse 5 says, Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians. Ashtoreth was a god that, a goddess, I should say, who by different names, Ashtar, Ishtar, Ashtoreth, from different, from the Assyrians and the Babylonians and different ones. It was all this same goddess that they were worshiping. And we get our word Easter from Ashtoreth. And it was a foreign god. And that's another subject, talking about Easter, where that came from. But he worshiped after Ashtoreth and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord and did not fully follow the Lord as did his father David. He was only wrong in one thing that we read about, and that is he started bringing in some idolatrous altars and that sort of thing, letting his wives worship like they wanted to worship, because these wives were from all over the world, having been sent to him as a gift or married into them to have a alliance from one nation to the other. You've all seen movies and stuff where the king marries his daughter off to a king of somewhere else, that kind of thing. That was what was going on. But he let these women influence him. Oh man, we miss Milcom so much. Can't we just have an altar? You hear that from 1,000 women, it's gonna really weigh on you. And Solomon, he broke down. He let them influence him into doing evil against God. So Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill that is east of Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the abomination of the people of Ammon. Moloch was the one that had his arms out like this, and they would lay a baby in there wrapped up, and the baby would roll down his arms into a fiery furnace inside of him. That was Moloch. He built he built an altar for Moloch, abomination of the people. That's why it was an abomination of the people of the Ammonites. He did likewise for all his foreign wives who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. He made it possible for them. I want to make you guys happy. This is driving me crazy. And he let them do that. God was not happy. Highlights of this part of the story: Solomon's many marriages, 700 wives, 300 concubines, were political alliances that pulled his heart away from God. He built altars to foreign gods. His spiritual compromise began gradually and not suddenly. He spent a whole time trying to find out what life is all about, and did many good things. But gradually, the influence of these women was too much for him, and he ended up succumbing to their petitions and bringing in idolatrous gods to God's people. He says, "I am the only God. You shall have no other gods before me." The very first commandment. But Solomon did it anyway, and God was angry. So what we need to do is apply this to ourselves. First point: the greatest danger to a believer is not sudden rebellion, but slow erosion. That happens to us sneaking up on us. Solomon didn't just one day decide, okay, we're just going to have idols. This was a slow thing that happened. Another thing is blessings can become stumbling blocks when they replace devotion. Solomon had asked for wisdom, and it would have been better for Solomon if God had said, okay, I'm going to give you wisdom, but you're going to be a poor guy. But God said, no, I'm going to bless you because you've asked for this. But these blessings became stumbling blocks for him. All the wealth and that, we see it all the time with the pro sports. Take a guy from off the streets of Harlem, and he can play basketball. Next thing you know, he's got $10 million contract. And what does he do with it? He's got all this bling on. He's got gold teeth and, just all this kind of stuff. And they end up spending it on all kinds of bad stuff. Anyway, wealth is not necessarily a blessing. It can be great, but it also can become a stumbling block. We need to think about it. When you compare your life, now none of us are $10 million contract basketball players, but if you compare what you have right now and you go over to Yemen or go to any place in Africa, you are wealthy. You have money like the people would just be amazed to think you can afford one of these. You can get a computer if you want to. Man, that's amazing. Well, these things, all these things can become stumbling blocks. What you can do with a computer these days is kind of like what Solomon did with 700 wives and 300 concubines. Blessings can become stumbling blocks if we let them happen, and it doesn't happen overnight. You don't just suddenly, oh, I think I'm going to go look at stuff on the internet that I shouldn't be looking at. It happens gradually, that sort of thing. And then there's any other kind of thing you can think of. It happens gradually. Just because we have it doesn't mean, well, it does mean we need to be careful on how we use the things that God gives us. We need to guard our heart daily. Just because we were faithful yesterday doesn't guarantee that today we're going to be obedient. We have to stay diligent. So I just want to bring out 4 things to remember. First one, it's not enough to be wise. Should you ask for wisdom from God? Of course you should. It's a good thing to have. But it's not enough just to be wise. We need to have a heart for God. Solomon started out with a heart for God, but he let it slip. He let himself be influenced by these idolatrous women. And but we need to maintain that. Not just have one, but we need to maintain it. Just because you had it yesterday doesn't mean you're going to have it tomorrow. You have to maintain it. And we do that by staying active and staying focused, looking at God's word, learning from God's word, studying from God's word, and practicing it in our lives. Keep active and just trying to improve ourselves in whatever ways that we can. That's how we keep our heart for God. And lastly, beware of distractions. These women that Solomon had became distractions to him and turned him away from God, distracted us from it. There's a lot of things in this world, as you all know, that are trying to distract you from serving God the way that we should. And we can't be too careful. I use this illustration. There's a danger from just drifting. There's a saying that says, if you're not going forward, you're going backward. You don't just stop. You go backward if you're not going forward. And if we're just drifting along, eventually there's going to be a crash, just like this. A boat is set adrift. Eventually it's going to come to this kind of an end. So we need to make sure for ourselves that we don't drift, that we stay active, learning about God and talking to people about it, and associating with one another, strengthening each other, all of these kind of things. That's the lesson that I wanted to put forth today, is just be on our toes. That we're really blessed in this nation, and we need to make sure we don't just rest on our laurels, so to speak, and just not do anything. We need to be constantly working at it, making sure we don't drift backwards. We need to keep going forwards all the time. So with that in mind, we're going to, I put this last thing on here. Even the wisest of us can become disconnected, and we all certainly can. So with that in mind, we're going to sing this invitation song. If you are subject to the gospel call, anywise, you need to be baptized into Christ, or you need to confess sin that you've committed in a public way. You can make it known and come while we stand and sing this invitation song.